The Star-Spangled Banner has been an emblem of America for a long time, and for good reason, because it helps us remember, it embodies this idea that is bigger than ourselves. You hear it at games and different events where it just evokes this sense of being part of something. And that's for good reason, because we all want to be a part of the land of the free and the home of the brave. However, now some in government and surprisingly, Woody from Toy Story, want you to think about this a little bit differently. What does this all mean for us? Well, let's find out. Welcome to Church Public. I'm Matt Odegaard. Well, again, welcome to Church Public. I really appreciate you stopping by. And if you haven't already, check out churchpublic.com for all of the previous episodes and a bit more content. And of course, you can check out the social medias and do like, subscribe, share this if it helps you in any way. I'm just trying to get the word out about what is going on in America, in the world. We're looking at current events from a Christian perspective, from a Christian worldview, so that as a follower of Jesus, you can be more informed about how to live. We're also going to have a Bible moment later. And so I make no mistake or no apology for bringing this Christian perspective. This is what this show is all about. The show is about what does it mean to follow after Jesus in this lost and crazy world. So we're looking at some of that today. So today, as I mentioned, I know there are many of you who love the Star-Spangled Banner. I know many of you, because I know you personally, have sung this at various games and events and other things across the years. And for good reason. And everyone stands for it. And a lot of times you put your hand over your heart or your salute and you look at the flag. And it's important because it reminds us that there's something going on that's bigger than ourselves. Now, that can't be the end of everything, obviously, especially when we talk about following Jesus. There is no country that substitutes for God or substitutes for Jesus, so make no mistake that I'm saying that. However, it's good for us to have a collective identity, understanding that we are responsible and have a duty to society in a positive sense. We have rights and responsibilities therein. But in a really weird turn of events, or maybe not so weird, we'll see in a moment, Woody from Toy Story, Tom Hanks, wants us to think differently from the land of the free and the home of the brave to something different. But let's take a look at this clip, then we'll talk about it.
If only we're brave enough to live through two of the most difficult years many of us can remember. Brave enough to pull ourselves up again and again. America is the home of the brave. It's why we keep getting up, no matter how many times we get knocked down. Like with our economy. It isn't all the way back, but it's getting stronger. We may be entering year 3 of a pandemic none of us wanted or expected. We are stronger than we were a year ago today.
We're bringing on new drivers. We're expanding. The fear that was there, it's going away. Business is booming.
We're strong. We are courageous. We are resilient. We are America, land of the brave.
I've long said it's never been a good bet to bet against America. And that's more true today than ever.
Now, did you hear it there at the end? I know I may be making a fine point on this, but I think it's an important point. He actually did say home of the brave at the beginning, but at the end of the script, or whoever writer says, Mr. Hanks or Woody from Toy Story says, now it's the land of the brave. But also there was something conspicuously missing, and I think intentionally so. I know we don't want to read too far into things, but he didn't mention the home of the free. Why? Is that intentional? Is that on purpose? Should this be the home of the free? Is what we're saying here that, yeah, you should be brave, but not necessarily so free. And why would I say that? Why would I even think that? Well, what has government done to America and Western countries and countries around the world? What has this last couple of years been? A lot of the issues that we're having now in terms of economy and in terms of inflation are not because of a virus. They're because of the government's response to the virus. And it's important to point those things out. So when you say, well, now we're living in a land of the brave, what does that mean? We're going to talk more about that in a moment, but I want you to remember what this should really sound like. And of course, that was the incomparable Whitney Houston. And I just felt like playing that clip because she's incredible and she sings it the best of anyone that I've heard. So I love that. At any rate, that reminds us. And I mean, I don't know about you, but even listening to that, you evoke a little bit of emotion. And you're like, yeah, I like that. I want to be the land of the free, the home of the brave. I want to live in a place that's free, and I want to live in a place where people are brave. And again, we're going to talk more about bravery in a moment, but I talk a lot about bravery, and I think bravery is really important. I think courage is really important. I think when Jesus says, take heart, have courage, be brave, that I have overcome the world already. That's a really important thought. It's a really important sentiment. It's a really important way to live. But you really can't have that without freedom. Now, before we go on with freedom, and I do want to talk a bit about freedom because I think that's important, and we talk a lot about that here on this show because freedom really means something. It really means something to be free, and freedom and safety, as I've talked many times before, they just can't exist in the same place. They really can't. If your goal is safety, you can't have freedom. If your goal is freedom, you can put measures in to try to have safety, but inevitably, and almost by definition, things are going to be a little bit unsafe because people are going to be allowed to do things, and in some cases, things that are illegal and unsafe and unnecessary. But that freedom allows people to do those things. Without the freedom and trying to cramp down people who and not allow them to do anything that is unsafe is not freedom, that's tyranny, and it's not safety either, it's tyranny. And that's the problem that we continually run into. So is there a reason that Tom Hanks, a.k.a. Woody from Toy Story, renames this the land of the brave instead of the home of the free? Let's see. Well, before we move on, I did think this was really important, and others who are maybe less versed in cultural norms may not have picked up on this, but I think this is an important point. And if you're not watching, again, I love you for listening to the audio podcast. I really do. And like and share this and send it out. And it will have an impact. But to truly have an impact on this next clip, you probably should watch it. Because what I'm going to play is a cartoon. And the reason I'm going to play a cartoon is, well, you'll hear some of the same language. And I think it'll make sense if you're watching. And if not, just listen to it and then I will explain it. So here you go.
Here we are, kids. The Grand Canyon.
It's so old and boring. I want a new one. Now!
Hello, I'm Tom Hanks. The U.S. government has lost its credibility, so it's borrowing some of mine.
Tousle my hair, Mr. Hanks.
Sure thing, son. Now, I'm pleased to tell you all about the new Grand Canyon. Coming this weekend. It's east of Shelbyville and south of Capital City.
That's where Springfield is.
It's nowhere near where anything is or ever was. This is Tom Hanks saying, if you're going to pick a government to trust, why not this one?
I just can't. Okay, so for those of you who are just listening and didn't get the pleasure of seeing that was The Simpsons from several years ago, where, in his own words, again, we're scripted, but in both cases we're scripted, but it still is funny, that Tom Hanks himself says the government has run out of credibility, so they're borrowing some of mine, and tousles this kid's hair, and it like sparkles with the magical presence of Tom Hanks. Anyway, I just love this. And then, of course, there's the irony in the scene of the Simpsons who say, hey, that's where we live. And Tom Hanks saying, don't worry, no one has ever lived there and there's nothing there. Because the government never does anything that is against any people ever. Clearly. I mean, again, I sound conspiratorial and I don't mean to. It's just funny. It's funny that this actually happened. This actually was a Simpsons episode. And then it actually is quote unquote real life now, where Tom Hanks is doing the same thing for the President Joe Biden, but in, again, real life. So this is just where we are at this point in our crazy, weird world where we are expected to believe movie stars as experts because we know them and we see them on TV. And that's just it. Again, you don't have to trust me on any of this, really. You can go and do your own research. My goal here is to do a lot of research for you so that you don't have to. But feel free to go and check any of these things. That's why I play you the clips. That's why I cite you the articles and other places where I get the information so that you can understand that I'm not making these things up. But, it's up to you. I'm just trying to save you time. I'm trying to connect some dots, connect some things that that otherwise might not seem as connected. And the weird thing, and I heard someone say this the other day, and I'm gonna adopt it as my own, so I will steal this, that the difference between a conspiracy theory and maybe something like a spoiler alert seems to be about 6 months. And that's just what seems to be happening. And here is another evidence of that proof. Now, there has been, this has been the most polarizing time that has happened maybe in American history, but at least in, several decades. And it's been polarizing because you have members of the country who are trying to use common sense or trying to do research or trying to use scientific method, trying to go their own way. And you have the establishment, politicians, media, academia, Hollywood, as we've seen, etc., who say it's my way or the highway. And you can agree, or you can get kicked off social media, you can get kicked out of your job. All of these things have happened. We've seen all these things happen. We've documented all of these things happening. And in fact, they're still happening. You can still get in trouble. And I feel like I live on the razor's edge, but I'm just trying to say true things. And, if I say things that go against the grain and go against Ingsoc, that's a 1984 reference, or whoever the party is, it's just going to be whatever it is. I have to say the true things. I have to say the true things. But every once in a while, and this is what I've been showing over the past couple of weeks, the liberal establishment, or maybe slightly less liberal establishment, or people that are beginning to wake up to all of this craziness that's happening, where we're using Simpsons TV plots to actually live real life, that they're waking up and saying, hey, maybe this all isn't what I think it is. Maybe we should think about this more deeply. So Barry Weiss was a writer for the New York Times, hardcore liberal, maybe even you would say leftist at one point, but rather famously, and then some of you may have seen this, some of you may have missed it, it doesn't really matter, but Barry Weiss left the New York Times in kind of a fireball of internet explosion because she said that, I think I have a quote about what she said. She said, quote, "Stories are chosen and told in such a way to satisfy the narrowest of audiences rather than allow a curious public to read about the world, then draw their own conclusions." That was Barry Weiss's quote as she was leaving the New York Times. And of course, many of us knew that the New York Times was a leftist establishment and just like the talking wing of the Democratic Party. But I guess some people didn't. And so it's great to see some people waking up. And so this person, Barry Weiss, went on Bill Maher's show and said this.
I'm done.
With this question?
No, I'm done with COVID.
Oh,
I'm done. It's like I went so hard on COVID. I
remember.
Sprayed the Pringles cans that I bought at the grocery store, stripped my clothes off because I thought COVID would be on my clothes. Like, I did it all. I watched Tiger King. I got to the end of Spotify. Like, we all did it, right? And
No, we didn't all do it.
Well, here's the thing. A lot
of
us did do it. And then we were told, you get the vaccine. You get the vaccine and you get back to normal. And we haven't gotten back to normal. And it's ridiculous at this point. I know that so many of my liberal and progressive friends are with me on this, and they do not want to say it out loud because they are scared to be called anti-vax or to be called science denial or to be, smeared as a Trumper. I'm sorry, if you believe the science, you will look at the data that we did not have 2 years ago, and you will find out that cloth masks do not do anything. You will realize that you can show your vaccine passport at a restaurant and still be asymptomatic and carrying Omicron. And you will realize, most importantly, that this is going to be remembered by the younger generation as a catastrophic moral crime. The city of Flint, Michigan, which is 80%, I think, minority students, has just announced indefinite virtual schooling. In the past 2 years, we've seen among young girls a 51% increase in self-harm. People are killing themselves. They are anxious. They are depressed. They are lonely. That is why we need to end it, more than any inconvenience that it's been to the rest of us. I think it's a pandemic. It's like, at this point, it's a pandemic of bureaucracy.
So there you go. I mean, she said all the things, and she said all the things I've been saying, other people have been saying for 2 years, and it is great that she finally catches up. And it's great that people finally say, wait, you keep telling me these things, but the results aren't different. And that's actually, I cut the clip off. It's actually, there are several minutes there where there's more information. If you want to go look that up, you can look that up. And it's fascinating because people that are liberal, maybe leftist or ex-leftists, or moving somewhere on the spectrum, are beginning to see that, hey, if I think about this and I use my brain and use common sense, some of these things don't make sense. And it's great that they got there. It's kind of sad that it took so long for them to get there. And you hear this person, Barry Weiss, say, everyone did it, like spraying your food with sanitizer and all these things. And no, not everyone did that. And even the host, Bill Maher, says, no, not everyone did that, because spraying your food with cleaner is not ever a good idea. Like, but some people just believed all of the things the government was saying like they were gospel, like they were scripture, like this is some sort of religion where they're passing down these edicts and dogma from on high and you have to follow it. And that's the thing that I keep pushing back against. I'm going to push farther than this show did. I'm going to push farther than some other shows do, because my standard is going to be the Bible and following true things. And sure, and I've gone back, you can listen to a couple different episodes at Church Public on the authority of government. How does government get their authority? Where does that authority come from? I'm not going to cover that in detail today. But we always have to come back to, what is God in all this? Like, where's the authority of God in all this? And if the government overruns the authority of God, or overruns the authority of our responsibility, our conscience, our freedom, what do we do with that? And where do we live with that? And she brings up a good point. The government said over and over again, and I played that for you a couple of episodes ago, you're going to get vaxxed, you're going to go back to normal, the vax stops all symptoms and all transmission. And then they were like, well, whoops, maybe it doesn't. And I mean, I love her language in this. She says we are now perpetrating a catastrophic moral crime, and goes into some of the statistics, which I've talked about in terms of suicide and in terms of the rise in depression and anxiety. They are literally through the roof. The statistics cannot keep up fast enough to the issues that are facing especially the young people today, people who have been kept home for a long time, or kept away from friends and even family for so long. That's not good for humanity, just on a broader scale. It's not good to be alone. It is not good to be alone. Someone at the beginning of the Bible said that. Hint, God. It's not good for man to be alone. From the beginning, God told us this. And yet we threw it all out the window for a case of the sniffles. And again, I know, I'm not saying people didn't die. I'm not saying people don't ever die. That's what I am saying. People do die, and it's tragic. And I do individually mourn losses that happen, but you cannot always pursue safety. You can't. And then you get to the statistic that she mentioned. And I lived very close to Flint, Michigan for a while, so I completely understand this. And that's an interesting place. And I have other stories about that I'm not going to tell right now, but indefinite virtual school, that's not good. I have relatives who are school teachers, and I have friends who are school teachers, and a lot of their job, literally a lot of their every day, is spent trying to catch kids up for almost 2 years of missing school. And now you're saying they're going to miss more school, or indefinite school? Like, do we expect these kids ever to learn anything in that environment? Because they won't. And we know this. It is quantifiable. It's not just conspiracy theory. It's not just like projection. Like, we know that kids don't learn well. That is quantifiable. Again, I've seen some of the testing information. And she gets to the fact that this is a pandemic of bureaucracy, and that's entirely true. It is the bureaucracy that is coming down on this, and that is the issue, and that's what quote unquote conspiracy theorists have been saying for 2 years. And so the problem with, all the people on this show and liberals and leftists and even people like this, whom I respect because they're waking up, they're starting to speak out about it, and it's somehow magical when they speak out about it and they're allowed to say these things. And again, YouTube, please don't take me off for this, but you probably will. When the people on one side say these things, it's fine. When the people on another side say these things, you get kicked out of society. And the problem here is, it seems liberals, leftists, who even are coming to understand pandemic of bureaucracy, and where this is going, come to the wrong conclusions. In other words, they self-identify as liberal, Democrat, whatever. So the conclusion to all of this mess is when the government takes control and we see them doing the wrong thing for 2 years, locking people out of their homes and keeping kids out of schools and shutting down businesses, sometimes forever, crushing the economy, printing money to incentivize people to stay home and not work, all of this and more. And the conclusion they keep coming to is, well, let's elect more Democrats because maybe they'll fix it this time. The same people who want to make government bigger and potentially take away more freedoms. And incidentally, this is the bottom line and kind of the definition of insanity. If you keep doing, or in this case, if you keep voting for the same things, the same people, why do you think there's going to be a different result? And again, I appreciate Bari Weiss and I appreciate her going on and I appreciate her saying these things and seeing these things. But it just, maybe I'm just impatient. I can admit that. I am not the most patient of people, and I admit that actually rather often. I just want people to wake up. I want people to wake up to the truth sooner, and I just want them to see the picture. I guess it's one of the gifts that I have. Maybe it's a curse, but I'm able to see where a path leads into the future. And I don't mean that in a weird and metaphysical way. I just mean if you do these steps, this is the result. It to me, however my brain works, it's not rocket science. If you're walking down this path, that's where the path goes. If you walk down the path of giving government more and more and more, and they take more and more and more of your money and your taxes and your freedoms, why would you expect that doing that same thing is going to get you to a different result? It seems like maybe we should start talking about, well, how can we do different things? Maybe even as I go back to the founders a lot. The founders tried to instill the government through the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and other documents, limit the government so that the people had more power. That really was, in a nutshell, kind of the whole goal, because then you have more freedom. And yes, we talked about this before. Sometimes that creates less safety. In terms of things can happen. Things can happen to you when you walk out the door and do literally anything. It's a dangerous world. Nature itself is literally trying to kill you. Not even just talking about viruses. Just go spend a night in the wilderness or in a swamp. Nature is going to try to kill you because that's the way it is. And this life is inherently dangerous. But the question is not whether you can be totally safe, or it's whether do you want to have more freedom? Do you want to be able to have the freedom? That's why I keep coming back to the verse, like it's for freedom you've been set free. And I know that's a different context, and it means don't go back to your sin. But it also means that you have the freedom to live. In Bible context, you have the freedom to even sin. That's true. And God gives us that. Our choice then is, do we use our freedom for good or do we use it for evil? Those are the literal choices that we have. And I want these people to get there. I want them to get to the place where they see like this isn't working when we give all the power to government and the government says, here, do this. This is good for you. Is it good for me or is it good for you? Like, what are you saying here? And that's where, like, when you ask, like, okay, the people who don't want you to have free speech and they're literally changing language in the moment, like our Hollywood star changing it to the land of the brave, not just the land of the free, the home of the brave, where they're literally changing language in real time. We need to pay attention to this. This is why I talk about language so much. Language, it does actually have power. This whole sticks and stones thing, it's a farce and it's a lie. Language has power, and it has power because it really programs your brain on how you think and how you live. And yes, we need to be brave. I actually talk about that a lot on this channel. Bravery, though, can only come in the context of freedom. Either you're brave and you fight for freedom and you live for freedom, or unfortunately, you're cowardly and you accept what you're given in submission. There really isn't a lot of middle ground. I thought about this for a long time, and I haven't been able to figure out a middle of this. Like, either you accept your condition and you just sit back and let life happen to you, or you literally get up and you're brave and you take your life into your hands, because that's what we do literally every day when we go out and do anything. Just consider driving. If you've ever been in a car accident or a serious car accident, which I've been in, you know that nothing is guaranteed. Today's not guaranteed. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. Even God says, like, you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And then Jesus gives us this great word, Matthew 6:33. Don't worry. because I'm taking care of you. And I love that. But the verse for the day for me is 1 Timothy 6:11. Fight the good fight of faith. And I posted this earlier because I came across it this morning. I've been reading through Timothy and some of the other Pauline epistles, and I just love this verse. And I'll give you a little bit more of the context of it. Paul says to Timothy, pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, steadfastness, gentleness. Steadfastness can be perseverance or patience as well. Fight the good fight of faith. Take hold of the eternal life to which you were called and about which you made your confession in the presence of many witnesses. Again, 1 Timothy 6:11. And from that we draw that following Jesus is not actually complicated. It's really not. Following Jesus is not complicated, but it can be very difficult because this culture, as we see, it's against you. This world is against you. The media is against you. The government may be against you. We'll have to wait and see on that, right? Your friends may sadly turn against you. Your family may even turn against you. Jesus talks about that. But God is for you. That's the beauty, and that's what I want you to end on. And I want you to understand that God is for you. God loves you. God cares for you. Jesus says he wants you to have an abundant life. That's really good. That's really important. We need to lean into that. So while the world is using whatever means it can to conform us to the world, we kind of do need to fight against that, fight the good fight of faith. And as Paul says in Romans, don't be transformed by the world, but be renewed in your mind through Christ Jesus. We need to push back against this world, and we can't do it without the strength of God, but we also can't do it if we just sit around and go, well, it's probably going to get better. It'll probably be fine. This is why Paul says to Timothy and similar things in Romans and other letters, you need to stand up. You need to fight. You need to win the race. You need to press through this. And it's probably going to be difficult. It's not complicated to understand, but it is a little bit hard to actually do day in and day out. And that's why Paul so often says, don't grow weary, but keep going. Peter says that. Jesus says that. Don't grow weary. Just keep going. It's not a sprint. It is a race. It is a marathon. It is a march to the end. And you can do it. I know you can do it. You can do it. You just need to hold on. You need to take every day as it comes. You need to try, as Jesus says, not to worry, and fight the good fight of faith. God bless you guys. I thank you for being part of this. And go ahead and send in any questions. I would love to answer them or talk more about this. Also, I do hope that God blesses you and keeps you. And I do hope that you keep the faith. And today, I think we're going to end with Whitney again because it's so good.